This podcast is brought to you with limited interruption by Rudy Luther Toyota. Whether looking for an exciting brand new Toyota, a certified pre-owned vehicle, or getting quality routine maintenance and service for your vehicle, Rudy Luther Toyota is the place to go. Rudy Luther Toyota, the southeast corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley. Subscribe to the podcast Beyond Politics. They host some of the biggest names and smartest minds. Beyond Politics is from a former Democratic congressman who helped ignite Barack Obama's campaign and a former campaign manager and political columnist. They go beyond the usual chatter on politics, news, science, and books. It's politics and everything beyond. On Beyond Politics, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Broadcasting live on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and, of course, in the evenings on WCPT, Chicago's Progressive Talk. It is the Matt McNeil Show for a Friday, which feels really weird, Patrick. Yesterday, I took the day off, and my son graduated the University of Minnesota yesterday. And so I did all that stuff. So this day feels really weird because I'm kind of tired. It was a long day yesterday, a lot of fun, and had that. I'll talk more about that coming up here in the 4 o'clock hour. But it's a disjointed day because it is your Friday today. I hope you're having a good day. We are loaded with guests this hour. Coming up here in about a half an hour, we're going to have Bill Corbett from Riff Tracks and Mystery Science Theater 3000. They got a new live show coming up here in July, as well as also I wanted to chat with him a little bit about Jerry Seinfeld's comments about comedy and technically the sitcom and whether or not the woke mob actually did them in. But we're going to start off today with this is just an absolute treat to be able to talk to this individual about a lifetime in the theater, and it is the Children's Theater here is in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and joining us right now to talk about a long career is the retiring artistic director, Peter Brosius. He has decided to depart the Children's Theater Company on June 30th. He is currently in their final production there, and he's kind enough to take some time to talk to us about a long lifetime career in working in the Twin Cities as the artistic director for the Tony Award-winning theater. Peter, thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Matt, it's great to be here, and congratulations to your son. That's a big deal.
It is. Really mathematics, not mathematics is the grad degree.
Who would think?
Who would think? Not me.
You'll be employed.
A job, you say.
Oh, my God. That's fantastic.
First of all, congratulations. When anyone starts a job, I don't think they always sit down and say, well, I'm going to be here for decades. Talk a little bit about that, because you joined in 1997 Children's Theater?
That's right.
And when did it become clear to you, it's like, okay, this is where I'm going to be for a long time?
I knew this was a special community, and I moved here from Hawaii, so I was crazy. People thought I was 35. I was running a theater in Hawaii, and before that I was running a program at a large theater in LA. And so I knew this was a great arts town, a great theater town, a great town for families. So when I got here, I was just sort of blown away by, this audience and the support for the arts and the quality of the artists here. And it just was, we were able to do some really wonderful work, and we had an audience that would go with us on wild rides, whether it was to the bottom of the Mississippi with Mississippi Panorama, or, creating the life of Buster Keaton, or, preschool shows. There was just so much. Bring hip hop companies over from Holland. There was just so much. And this audience was so great. They said, yes, 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 and yes. And so I just knew that this was a place that cared about the arts and cared about kids and cared about families. So it just felt like a really good home. So I don't know if there was one spot. It just kept being great. And also the staff here. God, this staff just cares so deeply about kids and about this mission and about doing quality work. So, you're just surrounded by people who challenge you to do better every day. So I just felt so lucky every day.
What you just described there, though, is one of the interesting things about your tenure there, is that I think that Children's Theater changed dramatically in those decades. that you've gone from, it was just, kind of, you put on kids productions, but now you did the preschool stuff. You did more teenage geared stuff.
Yeah.
You kind of, you seem to be ahead of the curve on the understanding that children is a lot of different groups and that you need to make sure you're addressing each individual group and not just trying to paint with a wide brush.
Well, and also, I guess, we just started from the assumption that children are smart. Kids are smart. They live in this world. And as much as I'm a dad, and as much as you want to protect your kids and keep them safe, in the era of the iPhone and the internet, you can't fully protect them. What you can do is what I call give them a moral rudder, give them a way to think about things and give them a sort of an ethical core and a curiosity about life, because the world is going to intervene. And so you want to make sure they're given tools to think critically. I mean, it's complicated right now. I mean, this is a tough time to be alive. It's a really tough time to be a kid. And so the more that you can honor them and say, we get it, and respect them and say, we know you're wrestling with some pretty mighty issues, and we're here for you. And we're going to provide characters who are going through things. We're going to provide situations where you can see that, hey, man, actions have consequences. When you do X, something happens. And the characters on stage are going to have to deal with that. And same in your life. And so by creating a space also where the community can have conversations about things that are vexing, because, and whether that's dealing with immigration or concerns about police or, all kinds of things, it's just like finding ways to create the theater as a place of conversation and a place where families can come to have ideas and then have things to really talk about with those kids. So that's what we've tried to do. And we've tried to also open the doors to some of the best artists in the world today, saying, make work for this audience. You're going to be happy. It's going to charge you up.
Did you get pushback on that? Because, I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people look at theaters like, oh, you just do something light and fun, and the idea of, and it wasn't that it wasn't light and fun. You guys did a lot of things that you were kind of sneaky cool that way. But, did you get a lot of pushback from people that were saying, is this really the place?
We got some pushback because we were committed early on to bringing, BIPOC actors into roles that may not have historically been BIPOC. And so, but that was the exception rather than the rule, where you'd get a comment like, why is this particular actor playing this role? But it didn't happen often. And it hasn't happened in a long time because it's just been our practice, that our casts are diverse, our creative teams are diverse. And it just matters because, we know what the future of Minnesota is. If you look in a classroom in our state, we're going to be a radically diverse state, and you can embrace that and embrace the beauty and the complexity and how the richness of that, or you can pretend that it's not happening and you'll be left in the backwoods of history. And so for us, it's been about like, how do we embrace the present, how do we embrace the future, and how do we create space for all of us to be together, all of us to learn from each other, all of us to be curious and open. And so I guess what's been exciting is we really haven't gotten that much pushback. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people don't like a particular thing or wish we weren't raising a certain issue. But, when people have a question about a production or something, and they write in, I call everybody. I call, everybody who writes in, I try and give them a call and say, this is what we were trying to do. And, we're very good, but sometimes we don't hit it on all cylinders. So maybe it didn't work, but this is what the artists were trying to do. And usually when you understand why people were doing it, they still may not like it, but you see, it wasn't accidental. We were trying for something. And most of the time we're very successful. This is, we hire really great artists, but sometimes you don't hit it. Mm-hmm. And so, I think what's been great is, whatever that journey is, the audiences have said, let's keep going. Let's try this, and sometimes it's pieces with no words. Sometimes it's pieces all in dance. Sometimes it's pieces with live, untrained baby animals, for goodness sakes. We've done every kind of thing,
Oh, that would have been fun.
It was fun.
Peter Brosius, once again, the artistic director. He's departing the Children's Theater Company. You took the helm in 1997. You had 187 productions, championed more than 70 new works from commissioned to fully developed works on the stage, served more than 5 million children in the community. You also, and one of the things I saw on one of the pages of your bio here is you've worked with with so many kids, 70,000 students through theater arts training. So have it ever crossed your mind how many kids who are currently working in theater, in television, in film, behind the scenes, in whatever capacity, over your tenure, how many of those kids started their first experience to this was coming to one of your shows?
That's one of the things that's so joyous about being here. One is that we have grandparents bringing their kids and then bringing their grandkids. So you have 3 generations, and that's moving. And the grandparents came to this theater as kids. We have kids who come see shows here. And there are many kids. They're working on Broadway. They're writing in Hollywood. They're doing all these things. And that's beautiful. But it's equally beautiful, those kids who are software developers now or teachers or whatever that is, who are, I hope, more empathetic. I hope more curious. I hope more risk-taking. I hope more improvisational. I hope more collaborative, because they took a class here and they worked with people who were really different than they were, and they created something beautiful. Or they saw shows that just lodged in their brain, because, these shows you see as a kid can have a really profound impact. They lodge in your head. You think about them and they stay with you your whole life. And so hopefully we've made work that either is so beautiful or so ridiculously funny or so deep or so challenging that it makes them love the art form. So as much as we love the fact that there are many kids who've grown into be remarkable actors and have a life in the profession, which is incredible. But there's also a large number of people who we hope take some of the lessons from these plays, from the impulses from these plays, about how to be open, how to be curious, how to be compassionate, how to think critically, how not to accept the easy answer, and then they just become better people. A world that needs some better people, and it needs us all to work together.
Your final production there, A Year with Frog and Toad, this is actually a revisiting for you. You actually put this forward. You took it to Broadway. It received 3 nominations, if I'm not mistaken, and you also received a Tony Award for Outstanding Regional Theater.
Right.
Talk about retouching on that story.
Well, okay. I mean, I was the artistic director and, the producer of it when it was here. I've never directed it. And so it was one of these things when Adrienne Lobel, who put this package together as producer and scene designer, and is also the daughter of the author of all the Frog and Toad books, Arnold Lobel. And so she contacted me and we began a conversation. She asked me if I was interested. I think I said yes before she'd finished her sentence, because Arnold Lobel's books are so deep, so funny, so poetic, so smart. And I'm trying to remember the exact, they were doing a reading of it in New York. I flew out to New York, listened to that reading. I was like knocked out by it, met with her and the writing team and liked everybody. And then we began the process of putting it on here back in, I think, 2002 back then. And we had a producer from New York who was very interested in it. And then we moved it to New York and moved it to Broadway, and got 3 Tony nominations, which was just thrilling. And, the song that you can see on our stage now was broadcast on the Tonys. And I think
Peter, if I can, I'm going to step in on you here. I've got to get a commercial break in here. I'm going to let you finish up on talk about this more when we do come back with the current production, revisiting this one. Peter Brosius, kind enough to join us today, 952-946-6205. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Friday. McNeil Show here on your Friday, 952-946-6205. Peter Brosius, the artistic director at Children's Theater Company, kind enough to join us. He currently is the director on his final presentation there, as he's going to be moving on. A Year with Frog and Toad playing over there. I'll make sure I include links to that on all the social media pages a little bit later on. But Peter, if we can, let's go back to what you were talking about before we went into the break, which was taking this production at that time in 2003 to Broadway and stuff, because that must have been, you're doing a regional theater, you're having success with this, but then all of a sudden it's clicking on so many cylinders, you do head over to, the pinnacle of theater, which of course is Broadway.
Obviously it was very exciting to see, Children's Theater Company's production of A Year with Frog and Toad at the Court Theater, on Broadway and seeing, stars coming to see it, lining up to see this show. It's very important, I think, for not only for Children's Theater Company, but for Minnesota to have a piece that began here, that had its first premiere here, that rehearsed here, was built by our shops, going on Broadway, and the respect it got and the honors it got and the 3 Tony nominations. I mean, it was pretty heady times, I will tell you, and it was just important because, we want people to know how important this work is for young people and the kind of quality and care that we put into the work, and to see that, showcased on Broadway for a national audience. I think it just meant a lot to all of us here to have the work that we do, because we take it so seriously. We work so hard to make this work beautiful and powerful and funny and deep, and to have audiences from around the country and around the world celebrating it. And then, of course, the show's gone on to be produced across the country, in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of theaters. And, it's a script that we brought to life. And so that's a good feeling, because it's a good story. It's a powerful story, and it's funny as heck,
Oh, well, and for you, once again, this time through, you're gone through it, and you're, as the director, that, that approach has got to a point. It's going to be kind of fun because you're revisiting something, but you're revisiting something from a very different and new perspective.
It's so true, because it's one thing to be a producer. It's another thing to be in the room with the actors. It's another thing to be in the room with the music director and the choreographer. And so, I mean, what was great about this is we have a very strong show. And then it was just a question of, what are the things that this particular cast brings? Are we making the stakes clear? Are we making the opposition to our poor toad strong enough? Are we finding the ways to tease and mock him, which are essential in this play, so that then he can find his courage and stand up? And so it was just digging into all of the moments and making them as strong and as clear and hopefully as funny as possible. So, I mean, the cast is just remarkable. They're so fun, and they worked their tails off, and you're just in for such a treat. They're so talented. The harmonies are just luminous, just so gorgeous. I mean, I will warn you, though. This is a real warning. These songs are so hooky. You will not be able to get them out of your heads. You'll be calling me at 4 a.m. saying, I can't stop singing Cookies. I can't. Help me. There's nothing I can do. It won't get out of my brain.
There are worse problems for a person with either the director or the artistic director. There are worse problems to have than a highly addictive play in theater.
Please.
When does that play to? How long is that playing over at Children's Theater right now?
I should know that. Into June.
Into June. What's next on your horizon? Obviously, you're leaving the Children's Theater, but I imagine you're probably going to people like you who have such creative ability, have such years of talent, such knowledge. My guess is going to be you're going to be doing something after this.
Yeah, and so this has been a wonderful year. I've gotten the pleasure to direct How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Alice in Wonderland, and this, and so I've just been so grateful and so blessed to work with these fabulous actors and designers and my incredible crew here. So I'm certainly looking forward to a bit of a break. And then I'm also looking forward to finding, which of the projects that speak to me, which theater projects. There are some writing projects I'm interested in. My wife's a writer, and she just got invited to speak at a conference outside Florence. So I think I'll be the Sherpa and carry the bags. So I'm really good at carrying her bags. So I'm happy to accompany her as she gets honored in Italy. And so we'll be, as I finish here, I'll be heading off to be the official bag carrier for a little trip back. She's from Italy, so we'll get to see my in-laws and that's just a joy. So I'm looking forward to that. It's been a long time, with the pandemic, we haven't traveled in a while. So
very well earned. You're kind of a legend here, and you've been able to drive it. I didn't even get into the financials that you have, the endowment and stuff that you have during your tenure have changed, which are wildly impressive. Those numbers there. I'm going to link to the story on that, because I read that. I'm like, wow, that's really well done. But on behalf of the Twin Cities and the Upper Midwest, I wanted to say thank you very much for all you've done for us here, and congratulations on what sounds like an absolutely fantastic final presentation for you during your tenure there.
Well, that's very kind of you. I hope everyone gets to see it. It is so much fun. I mean, it is laugh out loud, and it'll touch your heart, and you'll sing. And I sort of back to this community. I couldn't be more grateful for the support and how much this community values the arts and young people. It's spectacular.
Well, it is. It's one of those things where it's been nice to be in a community that has the arts like this, and to have, and you're part of the reason why. It just keeps getting accelerated and keeps getting better and better. Peter Brosius, the artistic director and currently the director at Children's Theater Company, and A Year with Frog and Toad, once again going on until June. Peter, thank you very much. All my best to you in Italy. You have a wonderful time with that trip, and thank you very much for the time today.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you. You have a great weekend.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Peter Brosius, kind enough to join us today. Children's Theater Company. Very, very nice. I got to tell you, it just is kind of a, I love living in the upper Midwest, whether it's, you like I said, I was just in Chicago not that long ago, and I was, I'm of course, Minneapolis. You get a ton of really good quality theater in these communities, and it has been a blessing. And I'm really grateful that we have these things. Children's Theater Company, if you've not been there, it is fantastic in Minneapolis. But yeah, there's a lot of questions I wanted to get to with him. I unfortunately didn't have the time because I got Bill Corbett coming up here in just a few minutes to talk to him about a few things. 952-946-6205. One thing I wanted to talk about just really quickly, and I will have to do this really quickly because I've got about a minute here. I was off yesterday, Todd. Thank you very much for filling in. I appreciate it. I enjoyed going to see my son graduate. There's a story that came out, and I'm going to get into this a lot more probably on Monday. The United States Postal Service, if you've not seen what's going on under DeJoy, in rural communities, especially rural communities which are kind of like satellite communities where there's a bunch of smaller communities that are serviced by a rural community, the Postal Service is being destroyed by DeJoy. And it's being destroyed because he got into all these contracts with companies like Amazon and UPS to deliver their packages, and they prioritized that over delivering mail, which once again should not be the case. You're the post office. But they have done this. And I want to make sure I point out something. This is by design. They want to kill this whole thing because they want the money that's there in the post office. Like I said, it's a deep talk. I desperately want to get into this because it's a huge deal. We're going to take a break, come back. Bill Corbett when we return. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
But I kind of lie.
Broadcasting in the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk, and in the afternoons on AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. It is the Matt McNeil Show. Joining us right now is, of course, a regular guest here. I'm going to call him a regular guest. We have him on all the time. Bill Corbett, of course, is Riff Tracks. If you've not watched them, they are hilarious. He, of course, got the start over at Mystery Science Theater 3000. He, of course, they're going to be doing a live show, which we're going to talk about as well. And also we talk about entertainment and stuff like that because it's just really cool to talk to Bill Corbett. Hi, Bill. How are we today?
Hey, guys. Matt, it's just one of you there, right?
Yeah, just me.
One Matt.
just me by myself today. Although it was great, and for people behind the scenes, because I did post this picture up on social media. When Cliff Schechter was in town, you and I and Cliff went and got breakfast, and that was good fun. I did appreciate that.
Yeah. We got the meeting of the brain trust there over some good uptown breakfast.
Oh, yes, and we all realized, not like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., we all have worms in there.
Mine are the biggest.
My parasite is my best friend. All right, it's Riff Tracks Live. I'm not saying what I'm going to let you take the movie here. You guys are going to be live on Saturday, July 27th. This is something you guys broadcast out. We talked about this with Fathom. You guys broadcast this out to theaters across the country, right?
Absolutely. We've done this since 2009, and usually we do it from Nashville. And that's just because there happens to be a production company there that has worked with Fathom Events a lot, and they suggested it, and it was a good fit. But every now and then we like to bring it back home. And we've done 2 other live shows from Minneapolis before. One was a Sharknado, which was not my favorite just because it was already slightly funny. But, And the other one was the Mystery Science Theater reunion show, which was a big hit. We had all the old gang back.
Oh, well, and this time and I'm glad you brought that up, because you and I have over the years, and also speaking of MST3K, Trace Ballou, we've had him on the air, and we've talked about what makes a movie great to riff is that the people behind it took it dead serious, even though it's a piece of trash. And, and we can go back and forth on like a movie like Roadhouse, because Roadhouse, it clearly, at the time, I thought this was a piece of trash. A lot of people tried to say, oh, we knew it was being tongue-in-cheek. I was like, I don't know. I think you guys were just trying to push out a movie really fast, and now all of a sudden it's become kind of so kitschy. You've acted like you intended on doing it. It's not Manos Hands of Fate. Come on, man. It kind of is to a point. But you've picked up another one, and speaking of Swayze, it's another one of his movies, which I think they tried to make this very seriously, but it has become just riffing gold, and you guys you're bringing what the masses want to them live in July. So what is the movie you guys are doing?
It is Point Break, and it is just 90s gold. They actually remade it again in 2015, but it didn't have the same kitschy fun, and that just sort of came and went real quickly. What's notable about it is that it's directed by Catherine Bigelow, who's actually like a very good director with the right material. She directed Hurt Locker about the Iraq War and a bunch of other stuff. Like, she's got real chops. But this was a little bit when she was kind of new and not brand new, but taking on projects that were given to her. And it's a weird disconnect because it has moments of actual kind of wow beauty in the cinematography and the direction, but the script is so dopey and so kitschy, and everyone's playing it for real, Swayze and young Keanu Reeves, pre-John Wick, is in it. And
was that before Speed too? That was before Speed, wasn't it? Right around then.
Yes, I think it was. Or not much, or like in the same time, if anything. But he was still like young Keanu, and he's very fresh-faced. He's a very beloved guy, justifiably, I think. It also has Gary Busey in it, who plays like his FBI supervisor. And he just plays a goon like he usually does. And, it somehow combines bank robbery with surfing, with skydiving.
Yes.
And it's just, it's like the Mountain Dew generation produced a movie.
Well, the trope I've always loved of movies like this is the 25-year-old seasoned veteran cop. Things like he knows things. What are you talking about, man? You're basically, all you're worrying about is the Timberwolves game coming up later on. You're not
exactly. Yeah, he's. They keep saying that he's like he's a rookie because he was like a star quarterback in college, but then he gets entrusted with an enormous amount of responsibility, like right off the bat.
Yeah, it generally ends up like Reservoir Dogs. I mean, if that's just, I don't want to spoil anything with Reservoir Dogs, but it generally goes badly there, and you try to give people that are not ready for the primetime light. But
just to sizzle the steak a little bit, they're tracking down a bank robbery team that holds up banks wearing ex-president masks, which is a nice touch. But that, the fact that it's like bank robberies are the crime makes it almost quaint. It's not like murder or terrorism or serial killers. It's just like they keep robbing banks.
Well, they seem to know exactly where they're at, which, kind of, why aren't you just going? Well, never mind. Today, by the way, they just do crypto. It just be they'd be robbing her, and everyone would be freely giving them the money.
It's the answer to everything.
Well, which brings up a point. You talked about the remake of this, and you're doing the absolute original pure gold that is the only one anyone should see. And once again, get tickets. Not only can you get tickets to go see them live at the State Theater on Saturday, July 27th, the Point Break riff, but as well, how many theaters nationwide are you guys going to be in?
Usually a little over 700.
Nice.
that's about the normal amount we get. It comes and goes a little bit. For a while, we were in Canada, and then Canada said, "Nah, we're good without you guys." There was a theater chain up there that was giving it a shot, but yeah, 700 across the U.S.
Well, and so Chicago, I'm going to presume multiple theaters down there. Get the tickets.
Oh yeah,
July 27th. You go see it. You'll laugh your caboose off. But you brought up the remake of Point Break, and I just watched the Jake Gyllenhaal remake of Roadhouse. You can't. Although, okay, I'll give Roadhouse a little bit of the kitschiness of it. The villain there was pretty, definitely it was in that Roadhouse vein. Mm-hmm. But I think you revisit these things, and it's almost like it's a desperate attempt by the people that were behind the original one to try to validate the first one. And for the most part, it just doesn't work. Just because when you strike gold like a Point Break or a Roadhouse, which truly is gold. I mean, and they might not want me to call it that, but when you really get that, oh my God, this is so bad it's good. You can't just go back and redo it again, because I think that there's a lot of unseen elements that happen to create something like that.
Oh, absolutely. And, sometimes it's just the chemistry and the combination of eccentric things, including the performers. And here we have a common denominator of Patrick Swayze, who was a, impossibly good-looking, graceful guy of the early 90s. But he found his way to a lot of kitschy stuff somehow. He played it absolutely straight. But, the original, I've seen the new Roadhouse now, and it had its good points. Like, some of the fight scenes were great, and, Jake Gyllenhaal's six-pack, if it wasn't digitally enhanced, was pretty impressive. But it's just the charm of the whole original idea of it being like, he is like a notoriously great bouncer, instead of like, here's an MMA guy slumming it. The fact that it's like he's a famous bar bouncer was the thing that really brought the first one together, in my opinion.
It's like being like a famous beer delivery man. And
exactly.
That's Jake over there. Look at him deliver the beer. You're like, what?
Yeah. Famous bar bouncers. Bar bouncers to me are like, high school linemen that, fell on hard times. They're just hanging around the same bar they did after college, and just say, why don't you stand by the door? You're a big guy.
Your drinks are comped if you basically stand there. Don't get drunk during the show. What shift? We'll help you out afterwards. So once again, we'll talk about this. I'll make sure I plug that again a little bit later on. I do want to venture in to the summer movie thing, because am I crazy? The summer movie list this year, there are some ones that look really good, like the Furiosa one, the next Mad Max. Hemsworth looks. Was it Dementis? Is his character in there? That looks fantastic. And then, of course, the Deadpool movie. If they do it anything like the first two, that should be an absolute hoot. But it just doesn't feel like there's a lot of really big movies coming out this summer.
Yeah, I think the industry is still reeling and figuring out what to do, and not making the best choices all the time. It seems like the days of Marvel guaranteed success are no longer with us. It's just they made too much lore and too many movies too quickly, and they extended it to television. And the last one they did, I forget which one was the
Marvels.
Last, but the Marvels. That was actually okay, like for a Marvel movie. Saw it on Disney Plus and said, all right, but I just don't think people are willing to go out to a theater unless it's like everybody. It just gets this certain word of mouth. Same thing with the DC movies. Aquaman came and went, despite a very charming leading guy, Jason Momoa. So, I am looking forward to the Furiosa movie. I did like the Mad Max thing that preceded it.
Well, and you talked about, when you were talking about Gyllenhaal and his abs, and they enhance them. The fact that, George Miller is still doing traditional stunts like they, very different from 1940s, but
he
still
is a boss, that guy.
Going to Namibia and filming there and really making just an outstanding film. I remember coming out of Fury Road and saying, am I crazy, or is that one of the best movies I've ever seen? It was so good.
Impressive.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I will say, too, you go back into the Marvel things, and I think that there is this interesting point someone made. He said, The problem Marvel had was the last two movies, the Endgame. That Endgame was the best movie they could have made. They could not have done that better. It was the ultimate comic book movie, and then the cliff off of that. There's just no way you were going to up that. And as you said, I think part of it is the Disney Plus, the TV stuff. It kind of diluted the product. But you pinnacled out. You can only do so many films after that, and you'd better have your A-list stars. I mean, they did the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 did somewhat okay, but you really you have not been able to catch that fire again, because I actually, to a point, I agree with it. I think the Endgame was just so good. It wrapped up so many movies so well, and it just, at that point, you almost kind of say, all right, guys, turn off the lights, shut the door, and off you go.
Yeah, I agree. It really was the buildup of years, and it started with Iron Man mostly, and it ended with Iron Man. And it kind of, and you got your sort of most bankable star there, and Robert Downey Jr. leading the arc through. And it just gathered nicely, and it ended nicely. And then they tried to kind of like pull it all apart again into disparate strands and introduce the whole multiverse thing, which was just baffling and feels kind of lazy as storytelling to me.
Well, and I do like the fact that Deadpool, this is one of the reasons why I do like Deadpool, is Deadpool does not have any problem looking at them. It's like, well, that's just lazy writing.
Absolutely.
That's just lazy writing.
Yeah, it's very charming. And it's from the comic books. That's like a style they settled on him from the comic books. He knows he's in a comic book, so he knows he's in a movie now. So.
Well, if he can, if Deadpool ends up saving that, because we already know they're going to drive that franchise into the ground. They will. They'll just kill it. It will be, just garbage in the future. But at the same time, if Deadpool somehow managed to resurrect that franchise, especially before the X-Men and the Fantastic Four get there, well, God bless him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bill, I tell you what, I'm going to take a break here, because you not only, once again, we want to encourage everyone to go on out and see the Riff Tracks live coming up here in July. At your local theater, or if you're at the State Theater in Minneapolis. We'll get to that once again here in just a second. But I wanted to come back because you brought in Seinfeld, and you and I have talked repeatedly about television movies morphing and changing, and somebody needs to send our shows to Jerry Seinfeld, because he seems to not understand that at all, which is really surprising considering how good he is. Bill Corbett, kind enough to join us. Riff Tracks, Mystery Science Theater 3000. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show. It's the Matt McNeil Show on your Friday. Bill Corbett from Riff Tracks, kind enough to join us once again today. Bill, you and I both, I think, were somewhat stunned. Jerry Seinfeld is an icon. He's one of the funniest human beings. I always watch all of his comedy specials when they come out on Netflix and stuff. But he went on, I think it was The New Yorker, and he made some comments and basically said PC crap is why basically the sitcom that used to exist on network TV doesn't exist anymore. And the first thing I said is that, no, it's the industry that seems to have killed off the sitcom, because the sitcoms are alive and well. I mean, Beef and Ted Lasso and stuff like that, they're all on streaming services now. And there's tons of stand-up comedy specials. And so there's a lot of these options out there. He just seems to put forward the idea that somehow being PC was the reason why all this ended.
I don't know what the man is going on about, honestly, because it's a shame, really, because I was so, to be honest, on his stand-up. I think he's a great performer, but his show was something special, and, that you just cannot take that away from him. It's iconic. And he always struck me as a really smart guy. So to see him sort of lean back into this anti-PC woke thing is weird, because he's not really offering a lot of specifics. The only thing I could find is that basically he thinks now that, unlike back in, he kind of contrasts it with when he grew up and we grew up, MASH is on, Cheers, Mary Tyler Moore, all those, that you could just come home and watch those and know they were going to be great. And he's saying now that they couldn't happen because it would go through so many committees And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think you're right about that. Like, I remember Mary Tyler Moore, I know famously they wanted to have her be a divorced woman, and the studio said, no, that's a little spicy for our audience. We need her to be. So I really don't know the specifics of his complaint. And I'm really suspicious when anybody baby boomer age or thereabouts starts talking about this stuff now, because it just seems like, okay, you're a cranky old man now.
Man yells at cloud.
I don't know what to tell you. Like, get specific or be quiet.
Well, and you and I have talked about the fact that the problem here isn't PC. It's the fact that these TV networks about 20, 25 years ago said, hey, I can start doing reality television, and it cost me 1/10 the amount of one of these sitcoms does. And that's all you see. I mean, it's either, it's either the same formulaic shows or reality television, and game shows. They're bringing back game shows now because they're cheap, and because of that, the streaming services picked up the slack, and that's where you're finding. I mean, it's not like they're not there, and it just is. Yeah. Does he not understand that most people watch television now through streaming services, not the networks?
I mean, it's just comparing. Not even apples and oranges doesn't even do it justice. Yeah. It's like apples and hammers is like the state of entertainment, TV entertainment today compared to the 90s, and much less the 70s with Mary Tyler Moore and MASH. I mean, and we had the writer's strike last year. We had the the SAG after strikes, and so a lot of it is based on how entertainment is owned and delivered and monetized now. So if he has any complaints about that, he'd be a nice 900-pound gorilla to talk about that.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of blaming it on woke at this point is dumb, and it seems dumber than him. But I think he's just decided to be a cranky old guy because it's not the reality. He might have had an individual experience in the 90s with that show with him and Larry David, who, by the way, just got done with a 12 to 13 or 14 year run of Curb Your Enthusiasm, where he was incredibly non-PC.
Oh yeah,
his partner. He could say all the dirty words he wanted to, and he played a cranky old sort of prejudiced guy who was a pain in the ass to everybody. But it just. For him to just kind of not acknowledge that. Oh, Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There's a show that's been running forever too.
Yeah.
The characters are more reprehensible than the Seinfeld gang was, and it's so I don't know what he's after here, saying it's PC. It seems like a kicking the wrong dog.
Well,
shouldn't kick any dogs.
Well, thanks, Kristi. but I will say too, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's there's one thing about criticizing someone for their behavior, Louis C.K. Unacceptable behavior. There's another thing about going out there and criticizing people whose only point of comedy is to mock or ridicule a specific subsect of human being, which the Rob Schneiders, the Roseanne Barrs sort of thing. There's no problem, and I just don't. And my God, you want raunchy? Go take a look at half the damn shows on streaming services. I mean, it doesn't leave a lot to the imagination.
I don't know what he wants because he just released. I mean, this was sort of like a press tour for his new Netflix movie called Unfrosted, about the development of the Pop-Tart, which I watched, and I have to say, It's not like a lot of belly laughs for me, but it was silly and it was whimsical, and I kind of appreciated it, and I got some laughs out of it. It was not any kind of edgy thing that, couldn't be shown. And I don't know if he's complaining about that, but it just feels weird. This is also kind of personal to MSC3K and Riff Tracks, given that we have faced the same issues. I'm not as old as Jerry, but I'm getting there. And we were on TV in the 90s, albeit at a much, 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 much smaller scale. But we have had to adjust as people kind of give us feedback. It's like, that doesn't feel good anymore. Like, don't make those kind of jokes. I love your stuff, but that alienates me. And to me, that is something worth listening to. Doesn't mean you have to accept everything on face value, but to just dismiss it like, nah, screw you.
Yeah.
You know, I want to do the jokes I've always done. It's wrong.
Bill Corbett is with Riff Tracks. Go to rifftracks.com. There are some hilarious bits they got out there, but once again, catch them live on Saturday, July 27th. It's Point Break. You can catch them live in person at the State Theater. Tickets still available, but you can catch them in your local theater as well. I'll link to all this later on. Bill Corbett. Bill, as always, thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Matt.
Take
good
care.
Fun as always. Bye.
Chicago, have a good weekend. Minneapolis, St. Paul, Hour 2 up next. Hour number 2 here on your Friday. Good to be with you today, Matt and Patrick. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. I will say, what an absolutely outstanding last hour there. Peter Brosius from the artistic director of our children's theater company in Minneapolis there, and once again, he stepping aside in June after a long and successful tenure there. Bill Corbett from Riff Tracks, which they're doing it live, coming up here in July. Yeah, that's some good stuff there. We'll have both of those interviews available up on the usual broadcast areas, your podcasting favorite areas later on. So, Patrick, yesterday, a remarkable thing happened. My son graduated from the University of Minnesota. We were at Mariucci and mathematics. Where the hell did that come from? Mathematics? I mean, you know, hey, I do Matt's Math Corner here every once in a while on the show, but I'm doing it with a calculator.
Well, someday when he takes over the show, he won't have to do Charlie's Math Corner.
Yeah, he's kind of the kid. He always liked math. He did well in it, and he was pretty good at it. And he's got a mathematics degree now. Do you need anything added? Well, I know a guy that can do it. He's got a degree. So let me know. That's one quick way to get someone a job. How badly do you need stuff added? Well, it was nice. The CEO of Medtronic was the keynote speaker. That was a nice get. But he knows where his bread's buttered. He needs the science nerds, because this is the School of Science and Mathematics. Science and Engineering was the school there that was graduating. He needs those guys. We need you at Medtronic here. As a matter of fact, the student speaker who was there commented he's going to Boston Scientific, and he actually turns like, "What are you doing, man? Come on over. Stay with the hometown team here." It's that kind of thing. Was there? I was wondering if there'd be a protest. I mean, there were some people that wore Palestinian flags and stuff like that, and there wasn't really any protest there. Now, this wasn't the liberal arts college. This wasn't kind of the general university graduation. This was the graduation of, like I said, the individual colleges do their own graduation, and this was a relatively small and quick one comparatively. I mean, that big one there is a huge, takes a while to do. It was very nice. It was still a few hours. I mean, it was like 1,000 kids. I mean, but these are literally the rocket scientists. They're all like the rocket scientists, man. As in rocket scientists. Astrophysics and stuff like that. Good, right? Geophysics. I don't know. There's like 5 of those guys. I'm like, what do you guys do? Are you making rock creatures? I don't know if that's a good idea. Just the computer sciences were the big one there. There was a lot of kids that were there. It was good fun. It was nice to see, and it was a nice, proud moment. We went out to Manny's afterwards. There you go. There you go. I was seated next to a group of swearing Canadians. They were. It was salty language from north of the border. What was that? Now, it's just some group of guys probably in town for a business thing. I mean, that's what it kind of sounded like. But man, they were kind of rip-roaring. Of course, they were deep in the drinks. I don't know what business is going to sign off on that dinner bill, but I can tell you right now, I'm going to guess a third of that dinner bill was drinks because they were knocking them back. And so, yeah, all in all, though, just fantastic. Oh. You know, my wife and I have been talking because just to say this, you know, we celebrated my son graduating. This was an expensive meal. I said to her, yeah, because we're both, one of the things, and you know, Matt's been a bit of marriage advice. Find somebody that you agree with financially, and that you kind of have similar financial spending and plans with. You know, that's an important thing. And she and I actually match up pretty well. And we actually, because this was a pricey dinner, I said, you know, our wedding will be one of the most, is going to be definitely the most expensive meal that we paid for. Our wedding was, you know, that dinner alone was like $2,000. We also did a summer event where we invited more people, and that was also a pretty pricey meal, more than what we paid yesterday. But I said, if you go through your life and you say the most expensive meals that we paid for were weddings or graduations, I think you don't regret doing it at that point. Because I think you found the justification to justify a meal like that. I would say I'm glad I don't eat like that all the time, because I would not want to. And I just talked the other day about the fact that I made up possibly the greatest hamburgers I've ever made. Relatively cheap, inexpensive hamburgers from the grocery store, put them on the grill. They were fantastic. I don't want to ever get used to eating really expensive food all the time, because I don't want to become that person who doesn't appreciate what that is, that doesn't appreciate what really good food is. And as a matter of fact, the way I do this, I feel that it makes me even more proud that I can say a week ago I made the best damn hamburger I ever had in my life. I made something that if 90% of the people who would eat a hamburger had my hamburger would probably say, yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. How'd you do this? It makes me appreciate it, because it's nice to visit that kind of lifestyle every once in a while, but it's not someplace that, I really would, first of all, I don't have the financial manner to live in that lifestyle all the time, but at the same time, it just, I think sometimes you can lose perspective on how nice some things are. I had a great time with that. That was good fun. And, I teared up. You know why I teared up most of all? I teared up because my dad graduated the University of Minnesota. His name was Charlie, too, Charles. And my son's named after him. My dad, my son, we were going through Kaufman Union. I used to take the kids out all the time, and we'd go hike around town. And we'd go do things, and we sometimes we'd go over and check out the Wiseman Art Museum over at the University of Minnesota campus, and then go into the Memorial Union and in Kaufman Union over there, and go and look around things. And my son, when he was about 7 or 8 or so, we walked past a display case that was a salute to like the 1948 homecoming game, and they had all the buttons and the banners and so the newspaper from the time and talking about all the fun things with it. And you could tell my son was looking at that and was like, wow, this is really cool. He was a young kid. And so the next time, and I told him, I said, well, you should talk to Grandpa, because I believe he was at the U during that time. And so he talked to my father, and he asked me, Grandpa, what was it like at the University of Minnesota at the homecoming game in 1947? And without even missing a beat, my dad said. And he starts going into a longer explanation of what that was all about, and what you experienced, and all the good stuff that was going on during the time. And you could see my son's face just become enamored with this idea of going to the University of Minnesota. Just fell in love with the history and this stuff, and the way my dad would eloquently talk about his college days and stuff like that. It was just, it really was, it kind of gave him the template of where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do. My dad pulled me aside afterwards, and when Charlie was, very quickly, I think even as 12, 13, 14 years old, was saying, I want to go to the University of Minnesota. And my dad said, I didn't try to do that. I didn't try to encourage him to go do that. I didn't want him to necessarily, convince him against me. And I said, Dad, he makes his own call on this. And he did. And he wanted to, and there are a lot of benefits to go to the University of Minnesota. And there really are. He's got a good degree. He's gonna do well in this world. My dad passed away about 6 months before Charlie committed. He got accepted and very quickly said, I'm going to the University of Minnesota. My dad would have been, as much as my dad did not want to encourage this, the idea that he had, a legacy to go to the U was going to, would have put a huge smile on his face. And I thought about that yesterday as I thought about my son walking across the stage, getting his diploma. And I thought about my dad and thought about how beaming with pride he would have been at that moment to see his grandson, his namesake, crossing the stage with his degree, and how much my dad would have enjoyed Manny's. I mean, I'm not going to mix words. My dad would have loved that. He would already know exactly what I wanted. He'd been really quiet while he ate. It would have been great fun. So, yeah, bringing it all back around. I was very proud. Hey, you guys listen to me all the time. It's you listen to this crap fest. I'm not exactly, Mr. Motivated, Mr. Stellar Intelligence, Mr. anything like that. So for my son to be able to come back out with a mathematics degree, I obviously, there's some genetic questions I have, but needless to say, I'll just take it as my kid. He looks exactly like me. So it clearly came from somewhere. I'm very happy. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Hey, since I got a quick moment here, let's talk about the puppy killer, Kristi Noem, what is she doing? What is she doing? At some point, you would think to herself, maybe I should shut up about shooting the puppy dog in the face. Yeah. Maybe you should. Maybe you shouldn't be saying anything more. Maybe you don't realize you've basically imploded your entire potential career. You do realize that you've done traumatic amount of damage to your ability to, yeah. But no, she desperately, what she's doing is she's trying her hardest to turn her loss into a win. She's trying to win a game she lost a while back. And so now she basically is chewing people out as, you don't get it, if you're upset with me shooting the dog, you're a coward because, you've never, you eat chicken and you eat beef and you eat pork, and you don't stare it in the eye while it gets killed. Well, okay, two things with that. The first being, you stared at the puppy eye to eye before you killed it? Yikes, you psychopath. Seriously. Look at me. Look at me. Why are we at the gravel pit? Oh, I'm supposed to look at you. Yikes! What are you doing? You sound like a freaking psychopath, Kristi Noem. You sound like a psychopath. The other thing with this, are you saying you ate the dog? Because you're a whole shame them because they don't want to get their fingers dirty because they don't want to understand where the food they get comes from. Your implication is you shoot things to eat them, yet you didn't shoot them. Well, first of all, you shot a dog, which I'm presuming you didn't eat the dog. Maybe you did. I don't know. But it's a weird analogy to try to use to justify your argument for shooting the puppy dog because you didn't eat, at least my guess is you didn't eat the dog. But let's go with the goat because you want to ignore the goat thing because the goat turns you into a freaking psycho. Kristi, the goat turns you into a psycho. If you are going to kill the goat for food, a lot of people do eat goat. It can be delicious. If you killed the goat for food, well, why did you do it at the gravel pit? Wouldn't you just have to haul it over to the processing facility or into your garage? Or why are you shooting animals at the gravel pit if your whole argument is, well, I'm not afraid to kill what I eat? Stare at me. Look at me. Look at me. My bloodlust will never know no end. Yeah. Wow, you're an idiot. You're an idiot because apparently there is a story also that came out that the book editor actually did tell her, you do not want to include this story in your book. And she said, I'll show you. Well, you sure have, you idiot. You moron. You're not coming back from this, Kristi. Yeah, you're right. You spent 5 years, 6 years cultivating yourself as a viable national candidate. And because of your own doing and your reluctance to just come on out and say, yeah, I probably shouldn't. I'm going to recall the book, pull that passage. Nope. Because you and your South Dakota Republican buddies were like, this is a good tough guy story that tells people how tough you are. We're too stupid to realize, well, most people don't like dog killers. What was the one line from the roast of Tom Brady? It's like, it's like Kristi Noem. Kristi Noem is like it's like Michael Vick, only angrier. Yikes. I don't know what the hell's wrong with you, but the first thing you should have done is saying, I'm sorry. If you would have just done that, that passage was supposed to be, we all know this would have been a lie. Let me just get that out of the way first. We all know this would have been a lie. That passage was accidentally included in the book. It was not supposed to be included in the book. It's something that I had to do. I did not proud of it. I apologize for it. If you were upset about it, let's move on. You could have done that from the get-go, but now you're quadrupling down, quintupling down. You're just trying desperately to win a game that you lost 3 weeks ago. Just stop. It's over for you. Enjoy your life in South Dakota. Because you're sure as heck not ever going to get to Washington, D.C. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. A lot of local stories to get to when we do return. It is the Matt McNeil Show right here on your Friday.
The queens on the throne, we will pop champagne. Baby, it's hard inside. You're running across my mind. I was twisted, I was over it. Saying I never believed in us. Taking a lonely night.
It is the Matt McNeil Show, 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205 is the phone number. A few things that I want to touch base on here as far as news stories any of the week. And like I said, it's really weird. When I started the show off, this doesn't feel like Friday because I took a Thursday off. When was the last time I just took a standalone Thursday off? That's kind of weird because it kind of screws up your perception of everything. It really does. Oh, by the way, one other thing I wanted to add. To all you clowns who sit out there in the rural parts of the state that say, the cities are dead, nobody lives here, nobody goes out. Dude, I had to try. I thought I was going to have plenty enough time to get from the University of Minnesota back to my house in Hopkins and then back downtown to go to Manny's. We left the University of Minnesota, we had reservations at 5:30. We left the University of Minnesota at 4:15. I had to take every back road, and we still were 15 minutes late for our reservation. We had to take every back road, every back alley. I mean, it was unbelievable how much traffic there was out there. And sure, part of it must have been graduation traffic over the U, but dear Lord, was it bad. I could not believe how backed up the roads were. It was the first time I can say this definitively. Thursday afternoon's drive was the first time that it completely and totally mimicked the pre-pandemic traffic days. It just, as a guy that stared at traffic maps, absolutely. Absolutely. It was jam-packed on the roads yesterday. 952-946-6205. All right, Republicans, tell me, where did the flag touch you? Yesterday at the graduation ceremony, the two flags they had the University of Minnesota flag, and they had the brand new Minnesota State flag up there. It looks nice. I like it. It's the woke flag. Oh, I'm gonna cry. I'm never giving up my old flag. You're gonna. Yeah. You don't even care. You guys are such lemmings that some Republicans say you'd go better buy a flag, and you go, I'll buy 10. Knock yourself out, man. Doesn't mean it's still the viable flag. I guess it's maybe better than flying your usual Confederate flag, if that's the case. I don't know. After decades of flying, Minnesota's flag will be lowered from the State Capitol building on Saturday for the last time. It will make way for the state's new flag to take its place in government buildings in St. Paul, stripped-down designs featuring a blue abstract shape of Minnesota, North Star, and a solid block of light blue that represents Minnesota's many lakes, rivers, and streams. The historic changeover to mark Statehood Day follows a whirlwind process late last year to rethink and redesign the symbols that have represented the Minnesota for most of the state's history. Minnesota's original flag, the state seal at the center and a blue-black backdrop, was criticized for decades for imagery that was seen as problematic for its representation of Native American communities. The flag stood for too long to exclude the first Minnesotans, and the idea of correcting that and making it inclusive doesn't just benefit 11 sovereign tribal nations, it benefits every single person in Minnesota. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz said earlier this week, addressing the Capitol crowd gathered from the state's 11 tribal nations. We can stand a little bit taller. We can lean into history that's a little bit truer. Now, I want to make sure I touch on this, because one of the things that the far right keeps lying about is that this wasn't about this manifest destiny about running Native Americans off their land. So you have to kind of put yourself in the mentality of white America at that time to understand how really racist this was, and intentionally racist this was. The Europeans, the eastern United States, they, in many cases, the Trail of Tears had happened. You were running Native Americans off their land, killing Native Americans. It had been going on for centuries at that point. And you still had this starving primarily European immigrant who wanted land, who they grew up in countries where the idea of owning land was something that never existed to them before. They were born into servitude. They only worked the land of their lord or prince or king. So the idea of America, you could go to the United States and you could get a lot of land and you could start your own farm and you could be your own person, was wildly attractive. The problem they had was the people that were on that land who were there first, they were more considered a burden than anything else. By the time you get to where they settled out Minnesota and you're getting to Nebraska and these states, it was the mentality of the white Western territorial individual was, our goal is to run the Native Americans off this land. The federal government went along with it with their crap treaties and stuff and their enforcement. And as a matter of fact, if you go to the Travis Dessous down, the History Center down there, I mean, it was clear. I mean, the federal government knew what was going on, and all they did was basically shrug their shoulders. I mean, what can we do? They weren't, you get out here and, you'd give the Native Americans the money for their land, and then immediately you had a grift set up right next to it where people said, you owe me money. Well, do you have any receipts? No, but they know they owe me money. All right, give them the money. And time again, they broke treaties and stuff. And then, this is frankly, the Dakota War of 1863 was the Native Americans getting to the and find out portion of the equation. And they went out there and started saying, no, you guys cannot just keep doing this. And then they sent in the troops. But it was all part of a design. It was all part of this idea of running. The intent was to get white Europeans there so they could run the Native Americans off. The flag actually embraced that idea of the manifest destiny. And the wife of the guy who helped, was it Sibley's wife, basically wrote a song/poem where she talked about the point of this is we are here to take over the land from the Native Americans. It is racist. The damn flag is racist. And I'm sorry that a flag you could not have carried the least amount about for years. I'm sorry that flag that all of a sudden is, now it hurts me to get a new flag. No, you're a bunch of stupid idiots that just don't understand it means nothing outside of the flag. And we shouldn't have a flag that represents running Native Americans off their land in a state where white people wrongly ran Native Americans off their land. Come on. I mean, they're stupid and they're stupid. And I get it. The Republicans have gotten you all up. They got your dander up. You got your dander up. Because they're acting like it's some sort of woke flag. No, you're just pathetic losers. You're just pathetic losers who are so easy to control. You're like a dumb cow. You can just grab them by the ring in their nose and drag them around. And they love you for it because you can basically be the instantaneous outrage they create within your little subsect of human is disturbing. They went through this, and this whole idea of we just want to put this to a vote. You'll lose. I think most people are like, okay, yeah, we shouldn't have a racist flag. And then all of a sudden, what will happen? That liberal metro area forced this flag on me. No, we're not forcing anything on you. Get the hell out. You don't want to be here? Go. Fine. We won't miss you. No one's forcing anything on you. And if your life is so fragile, you pretty little princess, that basically a flag is going to infuriate you, well, God, you need mental help. Seriously, you need to go see a professional. But the flag is hurting me. Last year, a 13-member commission created by the legislature and given a timeline of 4 months to budget to $30,000 to redesign both the flag and the state seal. The image of both shows white settler plowing a field in the foreground with a Native American on horseback rides westward towards the sunset. The imagery dates back to the 1800s and was criticized as a celebration of the idea that settlers were destined to take over the land, similar to other states' emblems designed around the same time. It was. Republicans who served on the commission have been critical of the process to create the real state flag, want to give voters a chance to approve the flag in an up or down vote this fall. It's not about whether you like the flag or not. It's whether Minnesota should have the right to choose what it represents them. Well, we did. They keep saying this was forced down our throat. The reality is it was. They went through a commission. They did as best as you could. For God's sakes, after all the flag designs were in, it was a miracle they were able to get down to one. Really. I like it. I got it flying on my house right now. A lot of people do. University of Minnesota's got it flying over there. It's relatively iconic. And I can tell you right now, if you're Minnesota and you want to look cool, don't go with the 59 emblem, 58 emblem, whatever the case may be. No one thinks that's cool. But I've already had a lot of people. When I wore that shirt at Sexy Liberal a few weeks back, I wore the shirt that looks like the Minnesota state flag. When I wore that, I had a lot of people coming up and saying, hey, I don't live in Minnesota. Where can I get that shirt? We got something that's going to become a little bit more iconic and a lot less racist. Let's go with it. And just seriously, if you're this bothered by a flag, go seek counseling or, even better yet, move. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show on your Friday. AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. All right, so like I said, a jam-packed day locally, a lot of news here. The Legal Marijuana Now Party will no longer be recognized as a major political party in Minnesota after the state Supreme Court ruled today that they failed to meet the legal requirements to maintain that status. The unanimous ruling from the court directs the Secretary of State's office to take all appropriate actions necessary to make sure legal marijuana now is not considered a major party on state ballots in this year's August primary and November general elections. 2 justices did not participate in the ruling. In February, the state DFL filed a petition with the court arguing the LMN party failed to comply with the state law when filing its certification for major party status. DFL-led changes to election law enacted last spring raised the bar for political parties to qualify as a major party. And by the way, this was by design because let's make sure we understand. The Legal Marijuana Now party wasn't so much about legalizing marijuana. It was about running fake candidates to basically act as spoilers against the Democrats. At least that's my opinion on it, judging from what clearly seems to be the evidence that it was happening. The court found that the party failed to satisfy the requirements of a major party by not maintaining a state central committee, subject control of a party convention as required by law. Major party, it should be, okay, legalize marijuana now. Well, can we legalize marijuana? The only, what is the point of your party? I mean, it's kind of like, you want to stop one problem. You create an organization to stop graffiti in a town. Well, you stop graffiti in the town. Well, you're done. Doesn't mean you can't revisit it later on if things change, but the reality is you're done. You can pack it up. The fact that they were so intently trying to be there tells me there's a lot more connections between the Legal Marijuana Now party and the Republican Party. At least that's my guess. That is a guess. I'm suspicious of that. Whether or not there are connections, because we know that there have been spoiler candidates run. Or at least Well, I don't even want to say allegations because they had the one guy. Yeah, he was only running because he was being encouraged to run. That was the one guy where the guy died. So it kind of gave up the ghost there. Major party status comes with major party responsibilities. The only Minnesota DFL and Minnesota GOP have consistently met that standard, said party chair Ken Martin. The Legal Marijuana Now party, which has been a major party in Minnesota since 2018, can try to qualify to participate in elections as a third party. There are benefits that come with major party status, including automatic ballot access, campaign subsidies, and the state's income tax checkoff, and the ability to submit candidates to the state presidential primary elections. Democrats have been critical of Legal Marijuana Now, alleging that Republicans recruited candidates to run under their party banner in the past elections, siphoning enough votes into their candidates to hand Republicans victories in key races. Secretary of State's office asked the court to rule by May 15th to give the state local elections administrations enough time to understand their requirements for the state's August primary and the November general election. So, yeah. It should not surprise you when you look at how many times conveniently a Legal Marijuana Now party candidate was running in a district where it's a close race. Weren't many Legal Marijuana Now candidates running in districts where either it was a pretty safe Democrat or safe Republican district. But if it was like a plus 1 or 2 Democratic district, there was almost always a Legal Marijuana Now candidate there. What are you doing there now? Marijuana is legal. Turn off the lights, close the doors. I think that you're done. Unless you really have an ulterior motive. That you're not really there for legalizing marijuana. Now, is all of a sudden they're going to shut the door and repaint the window and say, we're a single-payer healthcare party now. That's the only issue we have. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. I want to also touch on this here. And this kind of upsets me a little bit because it's good, but it's also bad. I'll share it. The Minnesota Senate yesterday voted to approve a bill that puts stiffer penalties on straw purchasing and prohibits the purchase of the use of binary triggers. So, good. The legislation authored by DFL Senator Heather Gustafson of Vadnais Heights, one of the 3 gun violence prevention bills that passed the House last week. The proposal passed on a 34-33 party line vote with the support of all Democratic senators, but the 2 remaining gun bills, one on gun storage and the other on reporting requirements, will not see the floor of the session due to some division in those proposals within the DFL majority in the Senate. Under current law, it is illegal to purchase a gun and give it to someone who isn't allowed to possess one due to a felony or other reason, commonly known as straw purchasing. This is the Burnsville situation there, where the person bought a gun for someone and gave it to someone that shouldn't have had a gun. The file increases the penalty for straw purchasing from a gross misdemeanor to a felony, a maximum sentence of 2 years in prison, and the maximum fine of $10,000 to $20,000. It also adds binary triggers, a device or modification that allows single-shot firearms to be shot on the pull of the release of the trigger to the list of trigger activators that are already illegal. The bill is one more step we can take to keep families safe and law enforcement safe from gun violence. Set on the floor on the head of the vote, gun violence requires multifaceted responsibility. The bill comes just a few months after the Burnsville shooting of officers and a paramedic killed by a 38-year-old in the hours after a standoff after the officers responded to the home. The guns used were lost, but the guns that were used by the man who'd lost his right to own firearms after the felony conviction were found to have been purchased through a straw purchased by an ex-girlfriend. Several Republican senators spoke out against the bill during the debate, claiming the legislation violates constitutional rights, gun rights, by requiring those who legally purchase the binary trigger accessory or gun already equipped with binary triggers to either hand the equipment over to state law enforcement or pay to have the guns modified without compensation from the state. All right, let me just say this to the Minnesota GOP. Damn right it does. And the fact that you are like, we need to stop the gun violence. Okay, we're going to do this. Not that. You see, these guys don't want to do a damn thing to stop the gun violence. They love the gun violence. They love this. And the fact that you have something that is designed to take a weapon and turn it even more lethal. And they're like, why aren't you thinking of the binary triggers? Isn't anyone going to stand up for binary triggers? Well, you guys apparently did. Fools. After the bill's passage, Senate Minority Leader Mark Johnson, and I'm going to come back to this, released a statement echoing those concerns about the bill turns the law-abiding owners into criminals. Despite the passage of 3 bills in the House last week with all DFL members on board, the House 2 remaining gun violence prevention bills, a bill that would require gun owners to report a law enforcement within 48 hours if their gun goes missing, and another that would require gun owners to lock and unload a firearm to store it, stalled in the Senate. At least one of the handful of greater Minnesota DFL senators in political swing districts have already come out publicly against one of the bills. As the straw purchase bill was being debated on the Senate floor, Grant Hochschild of Shermantown posted on X that he would not vote for the gun storage bill if it's brought to the floor. The safe storage bill isn't something I think makes sense in northern Minnesota. Well, it does, but I'll come back to you, Grant. DFL Senate Majority Leader Aaron Murphy of St. Paul in the Senate will not take up the safe gun storage bill because they do not have the votes without Hochschild. Before the straw purchase bill heads to Governor Walz's desk, Gustafson said it will go to conference committee due to a slight different language following additions that include clarifying language on the definition of binary triggers and an amendment from a Republican senator on Thursday to increase penalties further. So you remember when Johnson of East Grand Forks was saying, this is partisan, you're just jamming this down our throat. Wait a second here. They accepted a Republican amendment to it. It is bipartisan. The final vote might not have been, but the DFL was open to additional wording in there. Hochschild, by the way, also said he would not support the requirements, the reporting requirement bill as well. And I'm going to come back to that. So, first of all, the Republicans screaming this was jammed down our throat. There's a Republican amendment that passed on it, so it is bipartisan. And just because you all voted against it after you passed an amendment to it, that's on you. There was a bipartisan agreement available today, but Democrats chose to be partisan and political. That's what Johnson said. We all noticed we don't have to vote to the full agenda. The reality is that you had amendments. One was added to the bill so that it becomes bipartisan. You're a fool. Now, once again, the Republicans are they, as much as they scream they're against gun violence, they love gun violence. The Republican Party of Minnesota loves gun violence because it allows them to try to scare rural white voters into voting for them. But I'm going to call them out, all of them out, but I also am going to call out Grant Hochschild, the Democrat from Hermantown. Because first of all, I guarantee you he'll be like, hey, Democratic buddies. The safe storage bill, I could make an argument on that one. I don't want to necessarily talk about that. I do want to talk about the reporting bill. that when you have a gun that's been stolen, that you have to report it within 48 hours to law enforcement. And the argument that is made against that is simply this, that you're only hurting law-abiding gun owners. And I want to say, bull crud. Bull. If you are a law-abiding gun owner and your gun is stolen, you're going to call the cops. You don't need this law. You would have called the cops right away. If you love the police like you say you do, you discover one of your guns is missing, you would call the police right away and let them know. This isn't about hurting law-abiding gun owners, because every law-abiding gun owner I know would immediately call in their stolen weapon. This is about protecting the great ugly secret about guns in this state over and over again. They want to make you think that the guns that are getting into Minneapolis are coming. It's like a 1940s comic book. There's a truck running down the road that has guns written on the side of it, and they hijack the truck and they take all the guns. Woo-hoo! That's not what happens. The guns are bought generally by rural white people, brought into the city, sold at a dramatic markup out of the back of a car, and then when someone ever does, hey, whatever happened to that AR-15 you had? Oh, that must have been stolen. The reason why Republicans and this Democrat are against this bill is it's the great ugly truth about guns in rural Minnesota. They're bought legally by these people, and they're taken into the city and used. They make money off of it, and they run back. And they don't want people to have to explain why 5 years in a row, 10 guns were stolen from them. The guns that are on our streets right now committing crimes, they came from somewhere. And the only two options are they're coming from rural Minnesota and they're being sold in the city for a dramatic markup, or it's a gun store that's illegally selling them. Could be a little bit of both. But the reporting bill is a good bill because the only people that are against this are the people that are selling the guns illegally. And it tells you how common it is that the Republican Party and even a few Democrats are cowards and are trying to pass the idea that someone who is the good guy with a gun wouldn't want to immediately call the police if they knew that their gun was taken. You cannot be pro-cop, you cannot be pro-gun control if you're not for this. Because only good guys with guns would immediately call in their missing weapon. People who care about the police would immediately call the police saying, hey, I got a gun that's disappeared. They don't do that because these guns don't disappear. They're sold out of the back of a car. And they're running cover for the criminals. You want to get the guns off the street? Shut down this pipeline from rural Minnesota into our cities. Until that time, we're only going to see more of this. Shame on you, Grant. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We'll take a break, come on back. We'll wrap up the show when we do return. It is the Matt McNeil Show here on your Friday. AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Makes me hot, man. That makes me hot. I've seen, how many people have you seen posting on social media eating nuggets today?
I've not seen that trend today.
Oh, a lot of people eating the their Denver Nuggets today. Game 3 tonight, 9 o'clock. Is it a 9 o'clock start time?
I don't know if it's 8:30 or 9.
It's late. What's your thought? I mean, obviously the thing you say to yourself is they look like they're in control, but now Denver has to win these games. So really, if you want to put the fork in them, you got to win this game.
Absolutely. And here's a couple of thoughts. Denver's banged up. They may not have that secondary scoring tonight working for them. Jamal Murray may not play. I haven't seen any updates. The one thing that always concerns me is they're the defending champions, and they have the MVP in Jokic. That's always a cause for concern.
if our two big men are firing like they've been, if Kat and Rudy and Naz merging in, there's nothing in the NBA that can stop them. So a lot of it goes on to that. We'll see tonight. Hopefully, get a good Wolves win tonight. And where are the Twins at? The Twins
they're in Toronto tonight. So there have been some jokes about, will the rally sausage be allowed through customs?
No, it won't. Get hurt. I think the Canadian authorities were on the alert for that one. Well, all right, that's going to do it for the week. Taking us out is Elvis. Indeed. Have a great weekend. Native Roots Radio is coming up after me. We will be back on a Monday. Have a good one. Till then, see ya.
Out of Egypt land, he said, now don't you worry. We're in the Lord's hand. He's going to walk beside us. The time is coming near. He's going to wash away all our misery and our fear. I got a